right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Colonial School District Curriculum of the Board meeting for November the 13th, it is. Is there any public comment on tonight's agenda? No? All right. Seeing none, let's pass it over to Mrs. Grigaitis.
Thank you, Ms. Marino, and good evening, everyone. We do have a packed agenda this evening, but a very exciting one. If you look at our agenda, this evening we are going to be reviewing our annual achievement and growth data for two schools, our secondary schools. We're also going to be talking about school improvement planning within those schools because they do go hand in hand. We'll start with Colonial Middle School. We'll then talk about Plymouth Whitemarsh High School. We will also review the program of studies for Plymouth Whitemarsh, one new course, the AP World History course, and then some virtual programming that you have been hearing about often. So we're going to give you some updates about that, and we have one conference request to go over this evening. Mr. Merck, if you can go to the next slide for me. Before we jump into the school's data, I just want to quickly go over with everyone and review the federal and state regulations as to why we have this accountability for our schools. ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, that was signed into law by President Obama back in 2015. It reauthorized the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It replaced the No Child Left Behind Act. Some of those you have probably heard of. But basically, ESSA provided states more flexibility in designing their own education systems. It placed a greater emphasis on local controls, state control, and decision-making. But it wanted to make sure that we maintained the focus of improving educational outcomes for all students. So some of the information you hear, that's the background that goes along with it. The Future Ready Index, which is Pennsylvania's index, that's our accountability. It satisfies ESSA's requirements, and it was developed collaboratively with educators, families, advocates, policymakers, business owners across Pennsylvania, and was launched in 2017-18. So again, that's going to provide you with a little bit of background. And unlike No Child Left Behind, the Future Ready Index was designed to give a more comprehensive and holistic look at school performances, not just a traditional academic achievement score. Here's your data, that's what you're judged on. It considers academic achievement as well as growth. It also includes factors towards career and college readiness, attendance, graduation rates. So it's a more holistic view at how we are doing and how all public schools are doing. Every school district, if you look at the Future Ready Index, will have a district fast facts page. That is based on the previous year's data in the school district. You will see and have this information available to you for Colonial Middle School and Plymouth Whitemarsh as well, but this is just a reference to our current enrollment percentages for our student groups, our gender, and the race and ethnicity of our current population. Also included in Future Ready are the progress indicators that I spoke of. You can go to the next slide, Ed. There you go. The progress measures. Thank you. Again, I just talked to you about it's not just an achievement score. So you're going to have different measures. You will also hear about the school's school improvement plans. Pennsylvania does not require us to do school improvement plans because we are a school district that performs well. However, we do believe in the continuous improvement process. So we have our schools participate in the school improvement process for ourselves to continually get better at the things that we need to work on, because every district has something to work on. Within the Future Ready Index, you are going to see, and you may remember these before, some colorful codings and some arrows that go up and down. And just again, a general reminder, the arrows note If we are performing better, the same as, or worse than the previous year. The colored circles are going to let us know, did we meet the statewide goal, which I'll get into in the next couple of slides. The statewide goal, if you recall, used to be set for 2030. We had this little thing called a pandemic, and the effects of the pandemic have now pushed our statewide goal back to 2033. So when I explain briefly how those numbers come to be, you will see it's no longer 2030, it's 2033. We're also going to talk about the interim targets, and then again, whether we increase, decrease, or maintain the same performance. So that's a little reference page for you to go back to if you need to understand the icons. Again, just for reference, because many people will say, how do you know, or where did these interim targets come from? And I'm just going to explain this very quickly with the first slide. The rest of them are all for your reference. But again, I said that this started in 2017, 2018. Baseline scores were collected in that year from the state assessments, Keystones, PSSAs, and PASA. These baseline scores are all right there on the left-hand side. We're looking at the ELA example. The goal that was set forth originally was, like I said, 2030, pushed out now to 2033. The goal for Pennsylvania with the Future Ready Index was to reduce by half our non-proficient students. So if you look at that first score for our all students subgroup, and again, remember, a goal of Future Ready was for all students. So every single subgroup has a target, a goal, and interim targets for every single year to get to 2033, to reducing that by half. So when we hear tonight about our progress and our indicators, you will know that these are the goals that are set forth. These goals are given in ELA, in math, in graduation rates. They're all there for you for your reference. We are not going to go through them. Any questions about how the targets have come about? Yes, Chris.
Not so much about how they come about, but how do you, I guess you'll explain, but we have different students each year. So
We do.
How do you, like, obviously a student that you're measuring from 2017 is not going to be the same student you're doing in 2030, you know?
100%. So we use our local data and our benchmark data to actually do some cohort comparisons. We also have our achievement data, which will give us some cohort comparisons. The other thing that's worth noting here, as I said, we're looking at measures from PSSA, Keystones, and PASA. They're all lumped together to give these targets. So a student that is getting the PSSA, this average is also averaging in the Keystones. So again, it's an accountability measure that the state came up with. Is it completely accurate? I'm not sure anything can be, but it gives us a good guide. But we also combine this with our local assessment data to really look at those cohorts and individual students. But you are right, one cohort completely can be different than the next. That's the fun of it.
Been like that since No Child Left Behind.
Correct. All right. So again, please refer to those references if you're really interested in how any of the targets are set. And we're going to bring up the real stars, and we're going to start with Colonial Middle School, Mr. Sean Kaplan and his team.
All right. Thanks, Rosemary. I'm here with Mike Lyle, Markia McClinton, and Marla Spivey, our assistant principals, to go over our school improvement plan and the way that we approach the data and what we do with it. So to jump right in, this is an overview of how we start zooming all the way out before weaving our way down to the classroom. This also is a little bit of an agenda of what we'll go through, starting with achievement percentage of proficient and advanced students in each grade level and each tested subject area, and then looking at growth within those content areas. And the growth is represented several different ways within specific grades, subgroups of students, and then teacher. Later on, we actually go to subgroups assigned to specific teacher as well. So we try and narrow down as close to the classroom as we can to make some good decisions based off of that data. Before we get there, we look at the standard analysis, item analysis, specific questions, which types of questions are we getting right more frequently, which types of questions are we getting wrong more frequently, and basing some curriculum and instruction decisions off of that, and then ultimately what does all of that data lead us to do. So the first step, like I mentioned, is the achievement, and we'll go through each of these slides relatively quickly because the data speaks for itself. In the top right corner are the state average, the state percentages of proficient and advanced, and then the county. The left side is what we did in spring 2022, and the right side is spring 2023. So the number above that in the top right will show how we moved. So sixth grade ELA made a small jump to 76% proficient and advanced. Here's our seventh grade ELA with a smaller move, but again, about 3/4 of our students proficient and advanced. Eighth grade did move down. That number certainly caught our attention. There's an item related to the TDA reporting category that we'll speak about later that we're ready to target that as a goal moving forward. Taking a look at math in sixth grade, about nearly 65% and a good jump from the prior spring. And we're pleased to be outperforming the state and county there, but certainly have some more work to do to get to where we want to be. Seventh grade did a nice job, up 8.3%, and then eighth grade continues to do a really good job. Before we hand it off to take a look a little bit closer at growth, here's our science scores. Again, almost 3/4 of our students proficient and advanced.
Yep. Hi, everybody. So Rosemary already kind of alluded to what the Future Ready Index focuses on, so we're not going to elaborate on that. But I will say that if you take a look at what we had for 21-22, which is, I guess, the first year we tested coming out of the pandemic, we were able to meet the interim growth target or the interim state assessment target for ELA and literature, but we did not meet it for math or for biology. We did outpace the state, which is a good thing, and we are focusing obviously on getting to the statewide 2033 goal. So as you can see, that red turned into a lot more green for the 2022-23 school year, where we were well outpacing the state average and getting close to meeting that 2033 goal for each of those areas. So of course our focus then is continuing to look at which of our reported subgroups need to show additional improvement in proficient and advanced in those areas. Yep.
Thank you. Just a quick background on the growth. If students are in the green, that means they're meeting the standard growth. For instance, if a student scored 67 last year and 67 this year, they met the growth at pretty much the same score. We want to be in the blue, whether it's light blue or dark blue, with the exception of our advanced students. Our advanced students, if they're meeting and still at an advanced level, then that's what we want them to do. Anytime we see yellow or red, we're looking at the data trying to figure out what is going on there. Yeah, let's see. So if you take a look at our PVAS data for math, ELA, and science, the one thing that we've noticed is a statewide trend that the scores tend to go up from 6th to 8th grade, and that's the same thing with the data in our school, with the exception of our 8th grade seems to grow a lot more than other school districts' 8th grades. One thing we're doing with this data right now is our 8th grade teachers are meeting with 6th and 7th grade teachers during PLT times and talking about strategies and activities they're using with their students to try to give 6th and 7th grade some strategies they can use to try to bring their growth scores up. So here is some subgroup data. We do look at all the subgroup data. We explore that with the teachers. I'll give you some examples of what our teachers do. They do see each other's data. The teachers get reports with low, middle, and high data, and it is red, yellow, blue, green. They compare each other's data. If one teacher is in the blue with their low students, another teacher's in the red, they collaborate and talk about, well, what are you doing differently, so that they can try to help each other out with that. this is our ELA, economically disadvantaged, and our economically disadvantaged with math. And if you notice, 8th grade math, we're above or well above in nearly every subgroup. Our ELA with Black students and Hispanic students, we have some work to do with our 7th grade. They're, presently looking at that, trying to figure out another thing our, sorry, a little under the weather tonight. Another thing our student teachers do with the data is they get standard reports with how they did in each standard. They see how each other do with the standards. They see how the students do with the standards. And if students are doing poorly with one standard and a teacher is excelling in that, is in the blue with that standard, they collaborate, try to figure out how to bring those scores up. And here is our lowest performing 33%. So for ELA, our lowest students, we are maintaining the scores. We really want to grow them, but we're maintaining. For our math, our lowest performing students, we're growing in overall and in 6th and 8th grade. And then, all the collaboration, we're using all the data we find from that to create small groups to target the areas that we need to strengthen.
Mr. Hall, I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When you covered the first slide with the overall data for the 6th grade students, I believe it was. Yes. So I believe last year there was some conversation around some level of collaboration with CES, and I realize that they're not represented here today, but with CES and CMS in terms of, because I think we saw the same data last year where the 6th grade was well below.
Yeah.
So has that happened, or is there something planned to do that level of collaboration to identify kind of the why behind that coming from 5th grade to 6th?
Yeah, we have talked about that collaboration. Okay.
So we have focused on that. We had our beginning of the year leadership meeting with CMS and their teachers as well. So November marks our first common PLT time as 8 to 12. We do have a state training that we're going to be doing during that time, but we have talked about conversations, PLTs with our special education teachers with that vertical articulation have already taken place, but our general education beyond the writing within ELA, because Sean did mention that is a big focus. So we're taking the areas that are most important to us based on the data and starting with those. So yes.
And there was a couple sessions at the Best Practices Fair where the teachers were able to collaborate across from 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th.
So this is our WIDA Access performance, and in each category we have 6 students represented in each category here for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Given a total of 18 students, 10 out of 18 students represented are new to the district. There are 7 languages represented here. This doesn't include students who are actively being monitored or exited from ELD. Also, the domains for WIDA are standards-based, and they cover listening, speaking, reading, writing, oral language, literacy, and comprehension. As we see here, looking at the data, our students are being categorized as entering, emerging, developing, and/or expanding for grades 6 through 8. Okay, this is another chart that shows our growth. It shows a growth of cohorts, and for this the cohort growth is over 2 years. The data shows growth across all domains of literacy per the WIDA standards. The cohort here is a smaller one, but it's very important to us. It's still the 18 students that are represented in this data. Okay, this is a little bit smaller for people to see, so I'll explain a lot. So for the N here, it represents the total. So that is the total of students here. The composite score by proficiency levels are listed here. In the 2022-2023 school year, more students are coming to us as emerging. Something else to note here, there are more linguistic needs here. And with that being said, these are some strategies that we're doing to support these students. So we have our teacher who pushes in and pulls out targeted students based on the WIDA results. We have the highest need in 7th grade. Our 6th and 8th grade cohort is balanced, and there is a lower need for pull-out support at this time for these groups. The scores here don't reflect students on active monitoring after WIDA is complete.
And one thing I just wanted to jump in, the reason that we did include this access or WIDA data was because, as Markia stated earlier, we only have 18 students at the middle school, so a subgroup is made up of 20, so we did not have their data to report to you in the Future Ready Index for our English language learners.
Just a quick question around the number, though. We said, how many students are we monitoring right now? Or in the monitoring stage? I'm just curious if any of the students who we've monitored over the last year or two have had to go back to receive services, or if they've, kept on track. Just curious.
I don't believe that they have. We can definitely check with both Joe Passetti and Megan Penrice, who does a phenomenal job with our EL students. But we have about 30 ELs right now, and then roughly 18 in the or 15 on the monitoring area. So it's kind of split down the middle. But the point that Rosemary made about this small sample size for the PVOS data is one that I wanted to highlight as well. And just also, before we take a look at the Future Ready PVOS side of things, highlight some of the work that Megan does in particular, because she really puts on a masterclass of data-driven instruction. If you were to walk into her classroom, there's a bin for every student along the wall, and the students are plugged right into their data, tracking their own progress, and it helps plug their parents into where they are. And she does an awesome job communicating with the regular ed teachers too, keeping them apprised of how they're moving along with their reading and their fluency and so on and so forth, even if it's a math class or a history class, so that they can share in their success too. So I thought that was something that's important to celebrate. Okay, wow.
Hitting that. Okay. All right, so we had already taken a look at our achievement. Let's take a quick look at the growth for the 21-22 school year for English, Language Arts, and Literature. We did not meet the interim growth target, but we did for mathematics. As you can see, we had scored a 100, and then for science and biology, we had a score of 78. This is all for 21-22 school year. We have a lot of blue to celebrate for 22-23, and we are really proud of the growth that we had overall in all three areas. And you can see we are not only exceeding the statewide average growth, but also the growth standard for 2033 as well. So let's take a look at what actually is going into these growth scores. From an ELA standpoint, some of the strengths that we had highlighted were for 6th grade, our TDA percentage was 92% proficient in advanced. And for 7th grade, we were at 87% proficient in advanced. We also saw opportunity, obviously, for improvement for 8th grade, where we performed at 47% proficient in advanced. And then across all of the grades, our conventions of standard English definitely is an area of focus for the upcoming school year, and is reflected in our SIT goals, our SPMs, which Sean's going to talk about specific to the TDA.
But that, I'm biased as a former English teacher, but that text-dependent analysis to me means there's stronger reading comprehension. And that is so critical, especially from 8th grade through 11th grade, because of our goals for students to, whether it's to go to college or directly into the workforce. That reading comprehension piece is critical, absolutely critical. And the TDA across the state has been a challenge in 5th through 8th grade for several years.
Absolutely, and I was going to highlight part of that too with on the TDA side of things, it's one thing to comprehend the story. It's also another thing to comprehend the prompt and answer the right question. Students oftentimes love what they're reading about, and they'll write a beautiful essay that doesn't answer the question. So we work with it on that end too. The piece that I really wanted to highlight about the TDA, because that 47% proficient in advanced certainly catches our attention. If you looked the year before and the year before, it was 89% and 91% proficient in advanced. So we ask ourselves, what happened with this cohort that had been writing really well? And the answer made us feel a little bit better about it in that the cut score changed. So in the past, if 12 out of 16 possible points was proficient in advanced, it got moved to 14. And speaking with Joe and Rosemary and some of the colleagues around the county, they saw similar drops in the 8th grade TDA. So it's certainly a goal of ours to adjust. The bar raises, and we work really hard to meet it, and certainly believe that we can. So the TDA is a big part of that. It's a challenge, obviously, when we're exceeding at a pretty high rate or succeeding at a pretty high rate with proficient and advanced, around 3/4 of our kids, but we want to grow that every year, and our Linkit benchmarks are a big indicator of that. So our ELA teachers' SPMs are all tied to growth in that area, and we highlighted the specific subgroups, and that's all in mind with what they're doing as they're preparing for any assessment and some of the more specific classroom strategies that we'll get to later. Just the last piece on a standards end, that conventions, the standard English, some of the grammar, some of the nitty-gritty of ELA that I refer to it as. My personal opinion is sometimes it's less exciting. It's a little bit more challenging to bring to life, but it stands out as an area of need for all of our students across all grades. So that's going to be something we work on.
So I have a question. I want to try to ask it in layman's terms. So you have your cohort of students, and this group of students, you're not just looking at these scores. You're looking at their daily, the benchmarks, things. Okay. So I'm not sure how to word it exactly. What we see internally on a regular, basis with our kids and our teachers and how well they're doing compared to where they were last semester, last year, and what these scores actually show. Do they match, or are these scores what they're looking for, say, unrealistic and not really show you the real life student? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when it comes to reading comprehension questions, I think it does line up pretty closely, and the Linkit benchmarks actually give us a really nice correlation graph to show how closely it lines up. If they're doing this well on their benchmark, they're likely to do this well on the PSSAs, and that's very accurate. The essay gets a little bit trickier because there's obviously subjectivity to grading essays, but typically it does all line up with what we're expecting based on our daily local assessments and the benchmarks leading up to it. All right.
So the math, last year our strengths were geometry in 8th grade, including transformations, the Pythagorean theorem, volume, and surface area. In 7th grade, the number system, working with rational numbers, unit rates, proportional relationships. In 6th grade, geometry, area, perimeter, volume, and surface area. Where we want to improve this year is in 6th grade with the number system, primarily working on number sense. The better we build the foundation of number sense, the better the kids will understand concepts in the future. 7th grade, we want to bring the probability and statistics up. That used to be a strength of ours pre-pandemic, and we want to bring that up, if you look at our SIT goals, to 62%. And then if we bring that up to 62% this year, bring the 8th grade probability and statistics up some, and then next year, hopefully, we can carry that 7th grade cohort into the 8th grade. Our SIT goals, our other SIT goals are to increase proficient and advanced students by 3% in every grade level and grow the core cohort proficiency by 3% in the number system category. Once again, to build that number sense and hopefully help in future grades.
And I just want to jump in for any of us that are not, we use acronyms for everything. So School Improvement Team is what SIT means. So when we talk about the School Improvement Plan, those are the goals set forth by that team.
Thank you. I get it sooner or later.
Thank you. So these are our strengths for our features and processes and resources at 78%. Our area of growth or opportunity is principles of motion and force at 35%. For our SIT goals, we would like to do is, of course, increase our proficient and advanced students by 3%. But the biggest goal that we're really working really hard toward is identifying appropriate still standards for each unit, and identifying phenomena as well as three-dimension science approach. So how we would like to do that is just focus on questioning and discourse that allows students to apply understanding of concepts. So those last two are things that are new for us at our school, and those are things that we're really working hard at with all of our teachers for 6 through 8.
So we started zoomed out. How well are we doing overall proficiency in advanced? And now we're all the way down to the classroom. So a couple things that are directly in our school improvement plan based on all of the information that we just reviewed. We're starting to do more of these learning walks where we're pairing up teachers, whether it's within grade levels or across grade levels, that are having success in certain areas of their practice. It could be anything from doing a great job teaching a specific skill to managing their class, incorporating more small group instruction, and building out time for teachers to learn from one another in real time that way. The item analysis is a big one for us, following benchmarks, not just assuming the trends that we see year over year are continuing, but really digging in so we're responding to the students right in front of us right then and now. Conferencing and feedback on formative assessments have been a big push in writing in particular. There's or in ELA class, that is, there's many conferences, one-on-one or small groups, to give feedback directly on the work that students are completing then and there, and that's certainly taking place in math and science and all of our content areas, getting students gather around a teacher 3-4 at a time so the teacher can meet them directly where they're at based on data. At the Best Practices Fair and also over the summer, and also teachers just clicking around and exploring on their own, they've found some of the features within Linkit to create the small groups for them based on the assessment data to make the process a little bit more efficient and make it easier for them to jump in and do it to, again, hit students right where they are with the material that they need. And then one more time with the PVOS data, these examples, these pie charts were pulled from individual teachers. So Mike referred to this earlier, and we're starting to have these conversations more frequently in our school. Hey, let's look at our roster from last spring. How many kids fell into the lowest, middle, and highest achieving category, and how did we as an individual teacher grow them? So there's some interesting examples here. Without going too far into each of them, the example on the far right was from a special education math teacher. So she did a great job with her lowest students. They surpassed the goal. They did better than they would have been expected to perform in a typical classroom. Her middle group did what they were expected to, which we want to be better than. So it's interesting to see the breakdown and see what different examples look like, and then for teachers to put their heads together about, I grew the lowest group really well, but I missed the middle group. What did you do? And vice versa. So we're starting to find some success doing that.
Excuse me. For climate and culture, some things that we have been doing is our 5th grade orientation day. We collaborate with the 4-5 school to make that happen. We also work with those families, and they come in for a day as well. Our summer transition camp is something we're also very proud about. It's for our rising 6th graders. We do that for one day for those students. We have No Place for Hate group. We have our EIB leadership team that was developed, and we also do turnaround trainings. We just had, we are doing activity period again after years of not having it. So this is very exciting, where students get the opportunity to select where they would like to go for 2 days a week. We also have created additional homerooms. And what's very special about this is we have we have teachers of students with specialized services also being homeroom teachers, which is new. So they get to see their teachers being a part of the larger community. It makes a lot of students feel a greater sense of belonging. We have been conducting the PSSM survey. We've had a lot of data on this to help us move forward with some of the things that we're actually doing now. So some things that we have added is our new student and family. We had a new student and family summer welcome orientation that went really well. Our families, they didn't even want to go home, so that was really great. We have a peer mediator counselor, and we call it the Resolve Room, where it's a restorative practice, and we have found a ton of success there where teachers can work with students and students can work with each other or individual, but she's an amazing person. And this has been a great addition to our school community. We've also have added affinity groups where the counseling department is working on particular skills with students regarding social emotional growth and academics. We have a 7th grade team building trip. This isn't something that's new. However, last year we did that at the end of the year, and Mrs. Spivey decided, and the team decided to do it in the beginning of the year, which allows students to have a greater sense of belonging at the beginning of the year because it's a team building activity opposed to doing it at the end of the year. And we will be piloting a student ambassador group for our 8th graders because they had the lowest sense of belonging according to our PSSM data.
Thanks, Markia. Just a couple pieces to highlight here before we can certainly answer any additional questions you might have. Really excited about the guidance counseling groups to get underway. The guidance department has gone through pretty significant change, especially coming out of the COVID era, where in the past they were more kind of academic counselors over here, and then our community counselors taking care of everything else. And we've moved away from that model, and I think it's starting to really show success. We have 5 student groups starting. 4 are based primarily on SEL needs, and 1 is more of an academic kind of determination follow-through, executive functioning type group. And the counselors and the assistant principals did a really nice job creating criteria to identify students to be in those groups, and then we're going to do the same for the exit too. But I think some of the goals and things that we're trying to do culture and climate-wise are a little bit more difficult to quantify beyond the PSSM survey, but that's one of them that I think will really have a big impact for us.
Thank you very much, Sean. Again, I just want to applaud the middle school. We have been talking for years about that. We realize that increasing that sense of belonging does allow students to achieve. And looking at that growth and how we have exceeded the growth expectations in ELA, math, and science is truly a testament to all the work that they are doing. So I appreciate all that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. We can answer any questions if you might have any.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. Can we go back to slide 15?
15, sure.
And just for a point of clarity, PVOS data that we have now, which we have not had in a couple of years due to some of the gaps in testing, covers 22, 23, 21, 22, and 22, 23. So it's a 2-year composite score. So the 7th grade students, our 7th grade Black students who scored well below, that's over the course of 2 assessment windows.
This year was pulled just for last spring.
So it's just a 1 year,
Just
so it's a
last
1 year
spring's
composite.
testing.
Okay. How many 7th grade students do you have that identify as Black? Those would be currently 8th grade now. So when they took the test, how many students total was that?
That's a good question. We trimmed the end count off right below the PVOS piece here, so I would have to double check.
But we do have enough to count as a student group, so over 20, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess, so that was my first question, was like how many Black students we have in the 7th grade compared to the 6th and 8th grade, and just what data do you have over the years for that cohort of students? So this was a test, we have data for them now, they're in 8th grade, so this is their 7th grade data. How did they perform, that cohort of students, that student group, perform as 6th graders? Were they also well below at that point, or is this perhaps an anomaly? You know, just trying to dig further into it. I'm sure this is not part of the presentation now, but would like to hear more about what is the trend for that cohort of students, a cohort of Black students, even if we can track it back to 5th grade or 4th grade, to see like where some of those gaps might have taken place, and then also to help plan towards the interventions that we're going to provide for that students going into their assessment as 8th graders.
That's a great question. We can definitely run that report. I know we have access to all of that data.
I would also add in how many students have been with us since 4th and 5th grade, and then tracking students who, throughout the cohort, how many have been with us for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. About 10 years ago, I was visiting the legislature to appear to speak on a different topic, and there was a Chester County school district with 8th graders there, and they were being lauded by the legislature for their accomplishments in the math PSSA in 8th grade. So the eighth graders had some fun with the state legislators and said, we'd like you to answer 10 of the questions that we had to answer on the PSSA. And the legislators, to their credit, were great. This was not my school district. I wish I'm not smart enough to pull this off. And so one of the legislators said, there's no way I'm going to get any of them right. So they collaborated and they got 3 or 4 of the questions correct. And at the end of the presentation, one of the eighth graders, as only an eighth grader could do, said, this was actually the 5th grade PSSA. And my point is that, and I've said this to Rosemary and I've said it to many administrators, if you look, and it was on one of the earlier slides, I think the county was around 33% and the state was around 23% for proficient and advanced in the 8th grade PSSA. I firmly believe that cumulative math test is more challenging than the Keystone exam, which kids take in high school, because it's cumulative. And so to see 8 to 9% growth in achievement and then see all the greens and blues in growth is outstanding. Obviously, we have more work to do, and we need to dig into the data and get from the boardroom all the way into the classroom for those kids. But clearly, the path is, you're on the right path. But that 5th through 8th grade math PSSA continues to be a challenge for all school districts. And we're not going to shy away from it, but it's just a reality.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I want to also thank you, Sean, and your team on behalf of the board for the presentation, for sharing. And just so the public is aware, if you're listening in, we chose to shift this way so that we could have more open conversation and make sure that anyone that was listening had the opportunity to hear the data around the respective schools. And I also appreciate the growth data and the PVAS data having a strong emphasis in the presentation. So thank you for that, as well as the ELD data. That's really important. One just quick aside, I also am grateful for the culture and climate data. We all know this is something that we're focusing on, sense of belonging post-COVID. And it sounds like you have some really great, strong practices for identifying when students need to see a counselor or go to the Resolve room and things like that. I'm assuming that we are tracking whether or not students are going to be in there again or repeating and the effectiveness. So I just would love to see that continue over time so that we are aware of the effectiveness of the practice. That would be great.
We are, and just a quick note on that. Karen and I speak very frequently about that, and our counselors, Miss Green, she does a great job of keeping track of the students, whether when she met with them, how long she met with them, whether they were referred, whether they were asked, whether we dropped them off. So that's something that's really helpful for us too. Thanks for your support, everyone. Thank you.
And please let your teachers know how much we appreciate their hard work. I mean, it really shines through when you see how the students are performing. And that goes right into what happens, each and every day in your classroom. So please make sure they know that we see them and, we really support them and celebrate them.
And next up is our fabulous Plymouth Whitemarsh High School, Dr. Jason Bacani and his team.
For having us here this evening. To my right, Ms. Heather King, Mr. Ascona, and Mr. Price, our assistant principals, will be walking you through the data at Plymouth Whitemarsh High School, very similar to what the middle school had. Fast Facts is to start is really, as Rosemary mentioned, a snapshot of our demographic breakdown as well as our enrollment breakdown. And by gender as well, and race and ethnicity, which we'll get into a second regarding growth. Just to highlight, we are extremely proud of all the accomplishments of our students and staff. Over 100 AP scholars, over 30 currently approved AP courses, and 36 pre-AP/AP, 31 career pathways, multiple dual enrollment opportunities for our students, and a variety of ways our students can get involved. So just to paint a picture of the opportunities our students have at PW in addition to the strong data that we're about to present. So we're going to walk through first the achievement data, comparison overall 5-year trend at PW and then compared to the county and the state. This is a graphic to show by color, by year, 5-year trend at PW. And then every time you hit the button when you receive your data, it's a plus. You're always very pleased. I know the staff likes to hear that as well. So in literature, we're +8 compared to 21, 22. In algebra, +4, and then in biology, a +3. Working with Amber at Linkage, she was able to provide county comparisons as well as state comparisons for last year. And as Dr. Christian mentioned, really outperforming. And it's the same thing for PW High School in terms of comparing to the IU and the county. 77 in algebra, as you can see, and 30 is the county average, and the state's at 22. 81 for bio, and then 49 and 43, as you can see, and then 86% proficient for literature or advanced, and then 58 at the county level, and 57 at the state level. PVOS allows us to drill down in a variety of ways. This is the overall, and again, as you see from the maroon/red bar, anytime you're in that blue, is always a room to celebrate. And looking at all three areas that our students and our staff and our schools well above growth indicators, that means that's significant evidence that PW exceeded the growth standard. Drilling down even more, and this will be by subject area. Here's algebra. This is a breakdown of the projected 5 achievement groups, starting with 1 being the lowest, based upon previous data: low, mid, middle, mid-high, and highest. And as you can see, each group had moderate evidence that we exceeded that growth standard. That's compared to previous data sources, multiple data sources, and then their projection of how they're supposed to perform, students. And we exceeded that growth expectation, each of our 5 groups in algebra, biology, as well as literature. And moving along, we have, similar to the slide that CMS shared, is our overall Future Ready, which came out last week. And I was emailing Rosemary like daily. Is it out yet? And then when it came out, we were excited. Obviously, you never know how that may end up. You work so hard, and staff works so hard, so do the students. But having meeting the growth score for each of the areas, exceeding the average growth score from the state, is quite an accomplishment we were excited about overall. So again, I don't reiterate what the middle school had, but this is the key breakdown for each student group, which we have for you. I'm going to turn it over to Heather, who's going to go over the student breakdown for algebra.
So as you can see, we are in that dark blue, well above. So here with the PVOS, we're not talking about the standalone achievement results from Keystone. We're talking about that growth. So the growth, again, means that current achievement compared to all of the prior achievements of the students who are testing. So the goal here, did a student group, they say, do they maintain, do they increase, or do they fall behind in their achievement? So if you look here, all of our students are in that well above dark blue category, and as well, the subgroups as listed here are all in the well above range. And then we go on to the second page. We have our GIEPs, our IEPs, and then multi-race and white. So we are happy to say we're maintaining that dark blue, but that doesn't mean that we don't always have areas that we want to improve upon. So part of our school improvement plan and team, when we talk about this, we identify our strengths, areas of focus, and then our key strategies. So these are just a few. Right now, we are extremely proud of the fact that both modules, 1 and 2, have shown increased performance. And then if you look to our academic and honors level, in our honors classes, we have 92% of our students that are actually not only, all of them are proficient or advanced, but 92% of them are scoring in the advanced range. And our academics, we have 85% of those students are scoring in the proficient and advanced. Again, part of this whole process is taking a look at all of their data, identifying those bubble students, and then how can we meet their needs. part of the needs that we find, again, a little excerpt here is under that area of focus where we talk about drilling it down to the actual standard. And then we take a look at our current benchmarks and final exams and really just say, where are we seeing changes and how can we address that within our day-to-day teaching. We use the PLTs to do that, and we have our teachers collaborate and really drill it down to the individual students. And then we use our supports in the school day to target those student area of needs. We do have a very strong co-teaching model in all of our modified courses. Very proud of that. That is something that is really showing the support of our district towards our students who are in that middle area and then below. We're bringing back some, rational exponents. That's the math talk in all of us, but I'm sure some of you are like, oh, I don't want to hear about that ever again. A big shift, and we're proud of. We do currently use the Linkit benchmark assessments, but we're making a more concerted effort to give them in a period of time that spans a couple courses, so that we're tracking them at the end of one course, mid into another, so that we can target areas of need right before they go into that keystone test. And then we do have a lot of supports that are offered, not just in math across the building, but in math we have before, after school, during bonus block, and all lunches. So we have a good amount of support built into the day to support the student. So there's never a lack of, what can we do for your child when we're talking to a parent. They don't want to readily agree that they can give up their lunch to do more math, but we can put them in there if we need to. So that is math specific. I will hand it over to Mr. Ascona for biology.
Thank you, Heather. And we don't have much new information from math to biology. We have similar results. We're all performing well above in every student group. And we're really proud of that because, the one thing that we feel about biology that is a little bit different than literature and math is that we kind of have one shot to do it. It's not a continuous, they're not learning biology throughout their entire career at the, in our district. So we really take advantage of the amount of instruction and really just focused instruction that we provide at PW in that short window of time that we have them. Clearly, I certainly understand that in 7th grade we do have life science, which really helps us and helps our students understand. But 8th grade is really where 9th and 10th grade is where we really have the opportunity to teach our students to perform this well in the test, which is really amazing that every group was well above in all the categories here. So we're really proud of that. Now, really, a lot of the same things that Heather talked about as far as strategies and interventions are very similar. Certain things also, like as far as strengths go, biology is, there. I was a biology teacher, so obviously I enjoyed it. But there's certain parts of biology that even biology teachers don't enjoy, and that's typically the chemistry side of things, because chemistry is kind of more math-based subject matter. It's a little bit different than obviously understanding cells and structures and what things do. So if you see where our strengths are, students are really strong in understanding, distinguishing scientific terms, explain how organisms maintain homeostasis or balance, structures of macromolecules, and then identifying the purpose and utilization of enzyme catalysts. Those are all things that where our students are strong at. And like I mentioned, the more chemistry-based subject matter was a little bit more difficult for us. So basically properties of water to support living organisms, describing biological macromolecules, turning them into, or developing them from monomers. Those are all bonding structures. So that's more of a mathematic process than the other portion of biology is. So that's why it's a little different. But as far as key strategies in order to support our students, we do a lot of similar things that Heather talked about. We really like to use a lot of formative assessment. We don't like to wait till the end to show kids that they don't know something or they're unable to figure something out, and then it's too late to address it. So we use a lot of just targeted formative checks And when students, test a certain way, immediately we provide support within the classroom. Our goal is always to provide support in that specific class as soon as you find out where a student has a specific deficit. At worst, next period, but don't like to wait until a unit test and then you're kind of, you miss the boat. So those are a lot of the strategies that we like to use for biology. And now we have literature.
Student groups, again, pleased to share that well above in each of the groups on this first page. Students with GIEPs, we met the growth standard, well above for IEP students, above for 2 or more races, and then well above for our students that are white. Great that we're obviously closing the achievement gap while also keeping the integrity of ensuring there's growth for all of our students that are on that high spectrum. Strategies for English. Want to thank our school improvement team working together to really look at multiple data sources to identify areas of strength, areas of focus, and then key strategies. Strengths in terms of our benchmark assessments or form assessment, as well as the keystones. Vocabulary, strategies to clarify meaning of unknown words, point of view, theme and central idea, and the use of grade level vocabulary programs in conjunction with defining words in context. Areas of focus, nonfiction texts, central ideas, distinguishing between essential and non-essential information, particularly with our form assessments. This is the first year that Plymouth White Marsh High School facilitating the form assessment in algebra, biology, as well as literature. It's giving us really high quality data for our current test takers. We're going to continue to analyze that in order to develop next steps. And citing strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis, another area of focus. Similar themes, very much a lot of success that we've demonstrated with much of the strategies that you're seeing here. Data analysis in terms of using our PLTs for analyzing our form assessments, especially it being year 1. I know that today we had an English department meeting and they broke out into teams analyzing the Form A assessment as a group. Which is highly effective. As Heather mentioned, we have a variety of safety nets that we offer in the morning during bonus block, and we have an AVID tutorial. We have AVID students that are tutoring other students. ELT, which is after school, and obviously the high quality one, which is in class. Professional development for several years in terms of differentiated instruction, including in that is formative assessment, as Mike alluded to, and aligning that with the work we've done with success criteria and learning intentions. Our teachers are all, you ask the kids to go class to class and see these power slides. What a power slide is, it entails the success criteria, their learning intentions, and then your check in, check on, check out, which is your formative assessment. It's really making it intentional to ensure that we're monitoring student progress. Utilizing historical documents and primary resources to complement core reading and ELA, that's the nonfiction piece, and then continuing to collaborate with Bob Culpman, the social studies department colleagues in regards to nonfiction. So although obviously great results that we have, focused on the continuous improvement model, there's always areas that we can improve and seems to enhance each of the 3 areas. Overall, growth is in terms of our achievement data. We're always looking at our students. We have a document with all of our targeted students in 3 of the areas. It's based upon multiple data sources, and that's shared with all of our trigger teachers. In addition to that, adding the Linkit form assessment has been almost a game changer, that we have real-time data aligned with state standards as well as the keystone exams of our current test takers, in addition to the multiple data sources that I mentioned. Very similar to the middle school, we're going to continue to, what would be best is building relationships with our students, creating that sense of belonging for all of our students. Year 2 of our coffee and conversations in terms of empowering our students and student voice. I know Mike will be sharing later, and we've already worked with Melissa and her team to take a look at our PSSM survey data and our takeaways of what we can do better in terms of our culture and climate at PW. Continue to offer depth and breadth of our course catalog to prepare our students for a wide range of high quality post-secondary opportunities. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of teaching learning, which is really the bread and butter of what we like to do in the classroom. Year 2 of our power slides focused on student engagement, and similar to the middle school, our English and math department has started learning walks with one another. It's been super beneficial, not only for all the teachers, but also our new teachers that we've hired in the last 2 years. Thank you for your time.
And again, it is to be noted that the high school, as well performing as they are never stopping to look to see where they get better. And kudos to them for always working hard on all of their teachers. It is something else. Any questions for the high school?
I have a question. There was a couple slides where you mentioned nonfiction texts. What is the general thinking with regard to the percentage of literature that we're having them read fiction versus nonfiction? Because I know cross-curricular, you want to learn history, you want to learn this, that, and the other, but I think it's so important for our students to be reading fiction, creative writing, those types of things. So just curious what the thought is on that.
We do emphasize from a very early age a nice balance of both. Our content areas absolutely have to have the nonfiction, which has very early on been an area of focus for us because it was not always a strength. So we have been building that up from the early ages on. And then, of course, when you get to the high school, you have your electives for your creative writing and your other reading courses, but our content areas rely heavily on our nonfiction.
Aren't all standardized tests nonfiction?
Yes.
Yeah, I think all,
Not
yeah,
Dickies.
for continuity.
So that's why we have a balance
yeah.
of both.
I mean, I told the board about it on Friday. Middle school did a great job with the Future Ready Index that was released. It's now called Act 13, and the high school is in rare air to have the 6th highest score in the Commonwealth. 3 of the 5 schools ahead of us are magnet schools that you have to apply to. It's a testament to the leadership, to the staff, and to the students. And I know I told the whole staff at the last in-service day, I've never been a fan of lists, and I've never been a fan of rankings. We're never going to get away from it. So if they're going to have them, we'd rather be near the top. And so to me, it's more about, and Rosemary has said this, it's about the quality educational opportunities that take place on a daily basis. But like I said, if they're going to give us a number, let's have a high one. And so I think the middle school's growth is certainly outstanding, and the high school is in rare air. So congratulations to both of you teams.
Dr. Christian, Mrs. Petrino did say like something about a day off compared because of results. I don't know. She did.
It would be June 27th.
I'm kidding. Joking. I was only joking.
September 23rd.
Thank you.
I just also
You
wanted
could
to
leave
say
1 minute early on Friday.
it's just it's so impressive, and it just such a great feeling to see how well you guys did. Everybody, all the schools, but the high school, just to look at the other schools and the comparisons and go, whoa, like that's just so incredible. And my only other question is, why is Mr. Price standing up there?
So you have a separate folder, which is the next step.
Okay.
AP World History, course
I just
catalog.
wanted to make sure you weren't going to like just make him stand there for
Oh,
the heck
no.
of it.
I told him, come on up for a reason.
To look pretty. Okay, thank you.
And before we go on there, I also just want to congratulate and thank you for your leadership, your visioning, and your intentionality, and congratulations to all of you for the hard work, and to your teachers. I would love to just make a quick note again for our public that in January we're going to have the rest of the schools present. So we'll sort of tie it all together for anyone who's interested and wants to come out and see us in January. And also would love to continue this conversation in terms of, obviously the high school does an amazing job with maintaining the growth standard, looking at the subgroups and making sure that wherever they're coming in, they're staying and or maintaining and growing. But I think to Jamina's point that she made earlier is at some point we are coming up with some gaps a little bit earlier on. And so it would be really nice to see or have conversation around, as a district, where might these be occurring? Because we're obviously, once we're getting our students, we are maintaining and we're growing, yet we're still having these, some of our subgroups are still much further behind than they should be. So those are additional conversations to come, but just wanted to thank you and then just put that out there. Okay.
Thank you very much, and that was a perfect segue to Mr. Price.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. As having the pleasure of being the administrative lead along with Mr. Bassetti with the fantastic social studies department at the high school, we hold no grudges. We never became a Keystone, I assure you. So we had to have some sort of platform today. This is part two of what we proposed and what was proposed by the social studies department last year and approved here at Curriculum Committee of the Board. A sequence change and a revision of curriculum was presented by the team in the effort of looking globally and what's best for students. The department said, instead of, let's not fix something that's not broken, they said, we would love students to have more of a global view from the very beginning. Let's do some research. Let's look around locally and nationally and see if what we're offering in the right sequence ties. And this all came up as part of reviewing some of our AP data and the AP classes that the Social Studies Department does offer. They do offer every social studies option except one, U.S. government comparative. We do offer the politics, and one that is not listed currently in its pilot form, AP African American Studies this year, which we're pleased and we'll have information on later in the year. Very excited to be able to offer that. So AP World History was proposed by the group as part of a big sequence change. Originally Global Studies, a 10th grade course, was revised to become Human Geography after 5 successful years of offering AP Human Geography, which incorporated data and having students really look at thinking geographically, cultural patterns, and so on. So the staff, having looked at that success, said we need to bring this down to every level and incorporate it within, learning support room, within an academic and an honor setting, and they did so. Human Geography was a revision to Global Studies, which is currently running this year and again approved last year. And then AP World History, the group also determined to maintain a name origination, that everything would be the same, rather. World History would be a 9th grade course and then build into Human Geography. They would maintain consistency. The former 9th grade course, currently U.S. History, would then build from U.S. History into U.S. government. U.S. History, as listed here, is really a level 2 class. It's U.S. History 2, but we only offer one U.S. History at the high school, which is why you'll see it at that. So the AP World History course description you'll have in your folders also listed here. It's a modern world history course, 1200 to present. Students are going to analyze historical resources and craft historical arguments through many themes, including humans and the environment, governance, economic systems, cultural development interactions, social interactions and organization, and finally technology and innovation. All right. Ed, I did something to the screen. That will take place, again, in effect next year. Mrs. Haltman, along with the team, she'll be teaching the course next year, has already attended the AP Summer Institute this year in order to gather resources and work with other colleagues around to help build this to become the proposal, which we have before you as an advanced placement course. You'll see the course prerequisites. Since it is a 9th grade course, we will be working with the middle school. Collaboration was talked about earlier here. We'll be visiting them in 2 sequences, one with special education and also with the 8th grade teachers as a whole and the counselors to talk about prerequisites for this course moving forward next year. Currently, we do offer AP US History as the 9th grade course. Again, that will become the 11th grade course, and it will be replaced by AP World History. World History now becoming the 9th grade course straight on through. And I think that is it, unless we have any questions about AP World History.
Not about AP World History, but about
Sure.
history, social studies, if that's
Okay.
okay. So with this 4-year course schedule, and you said you're going to collaborate with the middle school, does that mean that they'll be planning from 6th all the way to 12, a continuum for building upon all the different things that they've learned to kind of streamline it? So I don't know that, I'm not saying that it is chopped or anything, but that it's just more cohesive of a learning situation?
That's a great question. Currently, U.S. History Part 1 it was offered in 8th grade, and it seemed to make sense to have that. And then what the students would do is they would leave the U.S. History component and go right into global studies and then world history. And based on what teachers were seeing, they said coming in, working in, and, looking at the government course as a 12th grade course, also a Pennsylvania requirement that all students must take as part of Act 35, a civics exam. It just seems and looking at locally and nationally, where everybody takes everything, we used AP as part of it and said, where is everybody else offering these things as well? So for a long time, it did make sense to have U.S. as both 8th and 9th. I'll leave Mr. Passetti, who's unable to attend tonight, or maybe Mr. Gaitis to talk about it in regards to curriculum 6 through 12, but it's always a consideration with the groups.
And there is a continuum 6 to 12 currently, and as Mr. Price already said, last year they had started working with the 8th grade teachers in the social studies department to ready themselves for this shift. And much like Mr. Price also just said, this is happening globally as well as across the Commonwealth. We often talk about having global citizenship. This is another way that we're going to be able to strengthen that.
Okay. And the other question I had was with respect to the human geography course.
Sure.
I don't know if this would contain a syllabus for that, like how it compared to what was global studies. Like, I've had kids go through global studies. I'm just curious to see how it has morphed into.
That's a great question. We don't have it with us tonight, but we were happy to provide it. I will say there was a component that teachers have been unhappy with for many years, which was map intensive, since globally things change quite often, especially with naming conventions. So what they did was, and again, this AP Human Geography, and I've never had the pleasure of taking it, has had these other components about data analysis and looking at things in a different perspective that the teacher who not only teaches it, who works with her PLT group, said, Mrs. Jamian, I really would love to revise this. And working with the group, they took it upon themselves to propose it, work with Mr. Passetti, schedule this throughout the year, the part of PLT in the summer, to do so. So in a future date, we'd be happy to provide a syllabus and how, where things were aligned and things that were, I guess, taken away and added for the benefit of the group, but I don't have it today. And Ms. Grigaitis, I'm sure Mr. Passetti would be happy to speak on it in the future. Yeah?
Thank you.
Great question.
Thank you.
Do you anticipate having enough rising ninth graders in the AP World History course to have a ninth grade section and a separate 11th grade section so that children who are current high schoolers who would be taking it in 11th grade will be in a separate section from the ninth graders? Or will it be a course grade class?
So the current, and that's a great question. If you look at the bottom of, Mr. Merrick, I'm going to ask you, is it going to need my mouse to scroll? A little bit down further. Thank you, Dr. Bacani. Appreciate it. We are phasing it in. And for the next 2 years, as students right now in ninth grade are taking U.S. history, they will be able to follow with AP Human Geography, and they're in that track. The current 11th grade course is AP European History. However, if students and we have, because right now the academic is Modern World History and Honors Western Civ for the honors group, we have talked about that if students of a different grade level are looking to do so, we would be able to run that. And it all determined upon the numbers of how that will be. We would love to increase our ninth grade AP scores. It is the only one available for ninth graders at this time. It'll all be based on, selling that to ninth graders and letting them challenge themselves in regards to rigor.
I also want to add selling it to the parents of the ninth graders, because
that is a big one.
You have a transition between middle school and high school, and a lot of parents may have preconceived notions of what AP really is, and how you're trying to build your numbers. I think bringing it to the middle school parents at some point to get them comfortable with the idea that it's appropriate for a lot more students than they think it would be appropriate for.
And thank you for selling program planning night. I appreciate that. Coming to you Tuesday, February 13th, or possibly Wednesday, February 14th. And we do it, and we would like all parents to come out and ask about future courses, whether they be dual enrollment courses or electives or other opportunities that we offer. But we will promote that again with the middle school parents. We meet with the middle school and their counselors our counselors and theirs together to work with students to make selections. right before course program links. So you as a parent, anyone as a parent can come out and say, my student was recommended for this or selected this, what is this about? And then make changes or other recommendations to the family. So hopefully we'll get a larger involvement this year. Thank you, Ms. Epstein. Appreciate it. Any other questions? All right, I will pass it to Mr. Merck. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Price. And Mr. Merck will briefly go over with you our virtual programming offerings. As Mrs. Burke is giving me eyes.
Good evening. We saw it fitting that since we spoke about the program of studies to give you an update on our progress with virtual programming and what we've created. You can see we did pick 3 courses, Career and Financial Management, Creative Writing, and Health and Fitness. We had 3 teachers work with us with creating these courses. From the EDI department, Mike Perez, from ELA, English department, Jim Costanzo, and then from the Health and Physical Education department, Dave Stewart. We provided them training. They were trained in primarily 2 areas, course design considerations and building engagement. And there's a slide, 2 slides from now, talk about why we chose those 2 areas. And we took a lot of time as a group to discuss non-negotiables, such as what the course content will be and what the course will look like. So for course content, we're going to follow very closely to what we already offer in these 3 areas. You can see these are the descriptions for these courses right here. Follow very closely to what we already have for these courses that are brick and mortar. But then we said, okay, that's the content that we're going to teach. What is it we had to change since it is going to be a virtual course? And that's where we looked at the course design considerations and the building engagement. You can see, the teachers focused on the structural components of an asynchronous Canvas course and the best practices and taking into consideration as you begin transition from a course that's brick and mortar, face-to-face in the classroom to something that's virtual. They learned what is considered essential in the Canvas course, or let's just say virtual course, and the accessibility features that will help create the best environment for all students. For building engagement, you're going to lose that face-to-face, everyday nature of a course when you participate in a virtual course. So we said building engagement was the second thing to prioritize, and they focused on exploring the various features that Canvas can offer to include discussions, collaborations, groups, and media recordings. The teachers explored the what and why of the discussions, how to set up groups in their courses, use media recordings to build engagement as the student would work through an asynchronous course. That is where we are at the moment. Teachers are very proud of this work. And, we're looking at the spring to have more of a showcase of what they look like.
I have a question around the tools for accountability outside of Canvas. Are there other tools for accountability? And I'm really concerned about the health and fitness one because there are physical aspects to that class. So how are you holding the students accountable for the content and the assignments?
So just like
or how would we be? I'm sorry, I know we're not offering it right now, but how would we be?
So in a course like that, there are things that'll happen from the beginning where students are saying, yeah, almost like a promissory, like, yes, we agree to these terms. This is what we're going to do to complete the class. But besides what they talk about from the beginning, students will have logs. Students will be taking data, and that'll be the thing that'll help inform the teachers the most is the data that the students would have to collect to show that, okay, here's what I'm doing, and here's where I need to make improvements. Here's where here's where more of a strength is. So that data component is going to try to guide that accountability. Plus, with health and phys ed, it's not just the performance, it's also your reflection as well. And that piece will be built in.
And one of the things I did want to mention is when they did work with best practices in Canvas and creating these courses, they went to creating an asynchronous course first, because that would be the most difficult part of it, and then we would be able to build in those synchronous components. Right. But the asynchronous, which was the most difficult, was created first.
And we can always backmap from the asynchronous once we have the schedule worked out.
Can you do me a favor? Oh, sorry. Could you give just again a very brief like summary statement of the why behind this again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with timing as well?
A couple different reasons. One, we need to be competitive with all of our cyber charter schools that are prevalent throughout the Commonwealth. We have about 90 to 100 students K to 12 that attend cyber charter schools, so we would like to offer that option. I think certainly moving in the next decade, the trend is going to be for personalized learning, 24/7 learning. We already see it at the university level. I don't think you can listen to the radio without hearing a commercial for an online university and taking your courses online. And then lastly, there has been some interest in our community and throughout the communities to have a later school start time. The realities of doing that here in Colonial with our busing schedule, the location of our middle school and high school, and our three-tiered system. If I, not to get in the weeds on that, if we were to flip the middle school and high school start time, I don't think that's tenable. To run them simultaneously would nearly double our bus force. So the concept here is to address two concerns. One, offer students who maybe learn in a differentiated setting better, in an asynchronous setting, some synchronous, some asynchronous. And if they would like to come in later, take a course online, and that would be their first period class. So that, we'll ask Mr. Price and Dr. Bacani to do their magic with the master schedule. And I just think that would be able to, I've gotten a few requests annually for families to do that, and this would help accommodate that. That's not the primary reason, but I think it's a natural benefit. But overall, I think we need to, eventually our goal should be in 5 years to have a program where the majority of our courses can be offered either in person or online. And I've told the board this many times. I've said it in public, and I've pledged it to CEA. I want our people writing our curriculum and teaching our courses. I have no interest in third parties doing it unless it's a course that we can't offer due to certification issues, like Mandarin or something like that. But it's not, there's no intent. I know it's been out there. Some districts have used this to reduce staff. That's never been a goal. We have class size limits in our collective bargaining agreements, and we need to continue that. And we need to continue to offer our program of studies, which is robust and deep and wide, to our students. And that involves our people doing that. So, and that's been something I think the board has been certainly supportive of in my time here.
Have you thought for in terms of the practicality, like what would a schedule look like if a student chose to do one of these courses online with the block schedule that we have now for the rest of the courses?
That's what we're currently working on. It would essentially, I call it a zero period. It could be theoretically placed in first period, first block, even though the students may complete the work during off hours, but it could be placed there. Then if they wanted to come in later, because they use that time for rest or sleep, they would complete the work at a different time and then just come in from second block on. Doesn't have to be. Obviously, I think it can also be used for the last block, and Dr. Bacani and I have talked about that. Maybe and we have students in the PW Academy who do a differentiated model and learn and do online learning, and then some of those students have jobs that they go to. So there's multiple applications, but I see it really lending itself to first and last block.
Thanks.
And as far as transportation would be concerned, if you had a cohort of students who chose to go this route, the district is or is not providing that transportation?
Initially, we would ask the families to provide the transportation. If we could work it, particularly, I wouldn't put a secondary student on an elementary run, but if we could work it with a middle school run, I think we could make an exception. It would all depend upon the size of the subscription.
Thank you, Mr. Merck. And the final thing on our agenda this evening is one conference request. This conference is for Beth Lynch, the PW college counselor, and you will notice that we are seeking approval at the board meeting on Thursday night for a conference that's happening Wednesday. But we were pretty sure that you were going to approve it, and it got in a little too late for CCOB last month. So you will be hopefully approving that Thursday. And that's all we have. Are there any other final questions?
Dr. Christian, you just mentioned something regarding busing for this virtual program and trying to see where we can fit like a potential, and I know that we're still in the planning stages. I just would really like for us to work really hard on that transportation thing, because if it comes down to your parents have to take you, or you have to have access to your own vehicle to get to school in order to access this virtual program, that can be prohibitive to students who don't have that ability to not get the bus that comes as part of the route. And I don't want any
Good
student
point.
to have to say, I can't do it because my mom can't take me later, or I don't have a car to drive myself at a later point. So I would just ask that we prioritize making sure that students that do want to participate have a way to get to school when their in-person day starts.
We can do that. It's a good point.
Any other questions from the board? No? Any public comment? No?
Monica.
No, okay. Thank you. All right, then let's, I also wanted to say kudos and congrats on the best practice fair. Woohoo. Shout yourself out, shout everyone out. I've heard it was amazing and wonderful. So thank you for all your hard work and attention there as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Team effort with everyone here. So, and
Yay.
again,
Thank
it
you
was
all.
a great day.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.
High school and middle school, you can go home. Thank you guys again. Excellent work.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
You want a break? Do we want a short break, or do we want to start right in? Okay, okay, all right. So, Mrs. Burke? All right, I would...
He said you could leave a minute early on Friday, Jason.
All right, thanks. All right, I would like... Shh. All right. I'm trying, I'm waiting for you. Yeah, but I'm the one who has to start it. Okay, I would like to call this CSRL, yes, sorry, meeting for November 13th to order. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Burke.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you to Curriculum for finishing up so quickly at the end. I was being polite. On tonight's agenda, we have 3 items. The first item that we will be discussing is the summary of the survey results of our psychological sense of school membership, the PSSM survey. And speaking to that will be Melissa Figueroa Douglas, our EIB supervisor, our Mike Gascona, our assistant principal at the high school, and Markia McClinton, assistant principal at the middle school. We'll also be going over 2 board policies for administrative review. The first one is on student services. The second is on the student assistance program. And lastly, but not least, Jess is going to enlighten us up on the updates of our CSD website application. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Melissa. God bless you.
As you know, thank you so much. We started on this PSSM journey last school year. It was the first time that the Colonial School District was involved with the PSSM. However, there were neighboring districts that have been involved for 5 years plus. So we have been working very closely with the University of Pennsylvania. Trying to advance the slide. Oh, here we go. We've been working very closely with the University of Pennsylvania on the PSSM, and we've been working on what is called the Improvement Science Cycle. And with that, we identify areas of opportunity that we could explore as a school district by identifying areas of need. Now, the PSSM stands for the Psychological Sense of School Membership. There are 18 questions that are asked every time, and we stick with those questions because we do not want to alter the data around those questions. So with that, I want to proudly share the participation throughout the district. Again, this is something that our students from grades 6 through 12 participate in. And as you can see, it is not mandatory. Families have the opportunity to opt out if they so choose to. And students have the right to not, take the PSSM if they so choose to. But we've had more than 2,100 students participate from grades 6 through 12. So 2,144 responses is what we've had from the middle school and the high school. And I am also pleased to announce that since last school year, our PSSM is currently a 3.81 out of 5, and that's an improvement from a 3.71. And here are the questions that are asked. This is just a sample of what the 18 questions are. And what you see here is a Likert scale for responses. So students can respond from never true to always true. And there are 4 indicators of belonging that are pretty much outlined here. And those indicators are acceptance, fair treatment, appreciation, and validation. And you can see the questions that are aligned to each indicator of belonging. We've heard the term belonging throughout this evening. I also want to share that the administrative team this summer explored the book Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity, which was written by Crown Apple and Cobb this summer. So when we speak about belonging, this is not something that just exists and lives within our classrooms. This is something that exists and lives and is extremely intentional from the administrative team here on down. So again, these indicators come straight from the book, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity, and you can see the questions that are aligned with each one. What you see here on this slide is the overall sense of belonging by question. What's interesting here is you can see our strengths and then our areas of opportunity. And I really want to take the time to highlight that our top areas of belonging are tied to the staff here at the Colonial School District. So question number 9, teachers here are interested in people like me, which is a reverse of number 5. And number 14, the teachers here respect me. So the top areas of belonging are tied to our teachers and staff here at the Colonial School District, which speaks volumes about what this initiative is doing for the school district and what this school district has always stood for, which is professionally developing our teachers and ensuring that they are equipped to positively impact the lives of our students. Our areas of opportunity are tied to peer-to-peer relationships, peer-to-peer interactions. You can see that the lowest area of belonging
Question number 4 and question number 12. Question number 4, other students in this school take my opinions seriously, is an area of opportunity. And this is a reverse question. I feel very different from most of the other students here. So improving those peer-to-peer opportunities for our students here at the Colonial School District is something that we're going to do a deeper dive in when we have the middle school come up and the high school come up and share the strategies that they have implemented from last school year and also new strategies that are implemented this school year. And thank you for your patience. I'm not used to driving the bus and speaking at the same time. So we have the overall sense of belonging by race and ethnicity. And we see here that at Colonial Middle School, our lowest areas, and I just want to also highlight, even though these are our lowest areas, these are still moderate to high responses as it relates to where we fall out of 5. So we are not in any low areas here for race and ethnicity. I just want to highlight that. But as a overall, with the highest being a 4.3, our lowest is a 3.65, again, which still falls in the moderate range for PSSM. So we see that there are areas of opportunity for our African American Black students, our Hispanic students, and of course we can't target those students that prefer not to answer. But we do know that those are some areas that we can work on at CMS. And again, Assistant Principal Markia McClinton will come up later in the presentation and share some of the strategies that have been working there at the middle school and some newly implemented strategies. And then at Plymouth Whitemarsh High School, we see that African American Black students have a lower sense of belonging, and our multiracial students have a lower sense of belonging. And at this juncture, I'm going to turn it to our building leaders to share the strategies that have been working from last school year and some newly implemented strategies that they can speak to.
Good evening. We talked about a lot of these strategies in the previous presentation, but I'll just reiterate a few of them and just talk about some other things that we are doing. So we talked about the 5th grade orientation day, the summer transition camp, the No Place for Hate, and our EIB leadership committee and turnaround trainings. We discussed the new student and family summer welcome orientation. In addition to that, we are also having frequent new student meetings monthly with our students who are newer to the district. We are doing our peer mediations with our peer mediator counselor. We have our affinity groups that are run by our counselors. We have our 7th grade trip that we changed the time frame to have a greater sense of belonging, and a new student ambassador pilot that we are doing for our 8th grade. We discussed these, but I want to talk about how we are being more intentional, specifically with our peer-to-peer opportunities as far as you mentioned earlier, Mrs. Petrino, about celebrations. So we're looking to find different ways to celebrate students. And with doing that with the student ambassador group, we're looking to empower students to have student voice and to pick students who may not be on the National Junior Honor Society or may not be in student council, but students who may not necessarily be selected for a leadership role. So we're looking to get opportunities to honor those students. We've done a lot of that over the summertime, and we found success there. For example, with our transition camp, just honoring various student groups, different opportunities. We found a lot of success there. Another thing we have talked about previously in the other presentation was just quantifiable data. We may not always be able to quantify the data of things that we are doing positively, but we're looking forward to trying to present those moving forward, especially with our restorative practices. Some things that we are doing are preemptively meeting with students who may need peer resolutions or may need a peer mediator with a teacher or student. So we're having preemptive meetings with those students so that the first time they meet with our peer resolution counselor, that it's not the first time isn't a negative encounter or interaction. Some other things that we would like to do are just having students really celebrate each other. And with the, we're also going to be doing a mentoring with our peer mediation counselor. It's going to be a mentor group that we're going to be piloting. So you talked about earlier with monitoring students who are frequently going to need peer mediation or having to go to the resolve room. So with that particular group of students, we are going to have students mentor them to help support in that area. And there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about for the student ambassador pilot that will be for the 8th graders who had a lower sense of belonging. It will look something like students being selected because they volunteer and they're also selected. We have homeroom, so we're going to really take an opportunity to use that homeroom more effectively to have some more peer-to-peer interactions with students and having students have opportunities to lead presentations during homeroom so that we can just celebrate other students and giving students leadership opportunities. And our hope is that with this, that we can have a greater sense of belonging at the middle school. So, thank you.
Markia, sorry. Quick question or more of a comment, both a comment and a question. So comment is, I want to applaud you all for taking advantage of the results of the survey, but also just generally and putting these strategies in place for a sense of belonging. And then my question is, for students who, and I personally, my daughter experienced this through middle school and high school. Some of these strategies weren't in place, and I'm thinking if they were, she would have had a better sense of belonging. But she ended up graduating with not having that sense of belonging, meaning she didn't feel like she belonged anywhere with any certain group. And I'm sure that there's other students who are in that same space. And so it sounds like there's a lot of recommendations being made and selected for students to be part of these groups. I'm just trying to understand, how do we catch those who aren't going to step up, who aren't going to acknowledge that they don't have a sense of belonging? How are those students going to be captured?
That's a great point that you offer, Ms. Plant. With each administrator traveling with their students, not really traveling, but moving up with their students, it gives us a greater sense of belonging within our teams. We have a great idea of who our students are. If you come to the middle school, most of the, like, I know about 95% of the kids' names. So I understand what you're saying about the sense of belonging. As far as students, they kind of are in their own social groups and they're all different and unique for the students. So in the summer, I've begun to try to, not just me, but the team has begun to look at students in different pockets and different social groups with really getting leadership opportunities for those students and really encouraging those students to take leadership opportunities. And it happens with conversations with students. It happens during team meetings where we discuss students, because we do that weekly. And that's something that we have been doing as, I guess, more increase with our team being new, and that's getting to the flow of being a new leadership team and working as a larger leadership school, like in that leadership committee there. But we have been working together with having more conversations with students and about students and really just really being intentional in that way so that we are looking at various students and various social groups. So I think we're getting better with that. I won't say that we are 100%, but we are trying our best to make efforts. And I think that comes with building rapport with students and really taking the opportunity to value students and give them dignity, and that's what we have been working on. And I think that happens with just trying to get to know the students more. And in our PSSM survey results, it shows that our teachers have a great sense of who our students are. They feel a great sense of belonging with us, but we need to really improve upon having that same feeling with our students. So we're really working on just having those peer-to-peer interactions. And I think we can gain success there if we begin to celebrate the small things that we're doing, as simple as, for example, there's a child that sometimes sits by themselves, and there's other students who purposely make it their business to sit with this particular student without being told to, or things like that. So just highlighting those type of opportunities where it gives people leadership opportunities, and I'm actually seeing those students even encourage others. So
I think there's two other areas in addition to all of that great stuff that's going on. I know that every Friday, right near the end of the day, students are called down to the office for recognition for
Hunters Club tickets.
Yep, for being caught doing something good. They should be students who would be great candidates potentially for the Student Ambassador Club. So we have a natural list. And then the fact that all of our middle school teams have common planning time. And as the administrators, and Markia mentioned this, they loop together with their class. So Markia knew her class before the teachers even met them. Just like we have standing agenda items where we talk about any students who might be on our radar for student assistance and need to go into the care team, we should also have a standing agenda item for those team meetings. Who are students that are potential students for the student ambassadors or leadership roles? So it just stays at the forefront. It's all part of being intentional. So I think they're doing a great job doing it. But I think if we add those two things, there's very natural entry points there to get more kids involved.
Indeed, and I'm glad that you mentioned the Hundreds Club ticket, because those are, we just randomly, anyone in the building, when we see a student doing a great thing, they get a Hundreds Club ticket, which gives them an opportunity to be a part of a bingo, which they get free ice cream. And we were very pleased to have students every day. We have a VIP lunch. So students who do a great job at lunch, they get the opportunity to eat in the commons area. And when we had some nice weather, we allow students to eat in the courtyard because we now have seating there. So that was also a plus that we have been able to do.
I have two comments. So I think another potential opportunity is with bringing back the activity period, in trying, maybe being intentional of creating an activity that some of these kids that are on the fringe of feeling like they belong might enjoy together. Like, I don't know what that would be, but could be something intentional. And the other question I have is, you had mentioned about having students mentor other students.
Yes.
And in what capacity were you thinking? That was the homeroom thing?
For the
or?
mentoring, it was basically for students who already have been having to go to the resolve room numerous times already. So they were, like, I guess you could say, frequent flyers. So with that being said, we realized that it was a need to support those students beyond the resolve room, even though that's something that we have been doing that as a restorative measure in practice. So we were thinking, as Mrs. Green, who's our peer mediator counselor, she was thinking about she's not thinking, she's going to do a mentor program. So it would look like students who are doing a great job, maybe, as Dr. Christian said, those students who are getting Hundreds Club tickets, or students who are nominated by their teachers, or students who need just a kind push because we see leadership potential within them in their various social groups. It would look like one of those students mentoring this particular kid to give them some advice and strategies around middle school, because we know middle school can be a very difficult place to navigate at times.
I do. I just have one comment with that. So with respect to middle school students and just their own emotional mindset, if there's so I had a daughter in middle school who ended up sort of being a mentor, befriending another student, and became really hard psychologically for her because the student had so many emotional needs that other people didn't necessarily realize, but it was like sucking the life out of my daughter, and I didn't know it until it got too far along. So I do think the peer-to-peer mentoring is definitely something to pursue. I just think that maybe the students who are chosen as the ambassador, or whatever, they understand that there are boundaries, and so you don't want them to feel that they're emotionally responsible for the other student. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I think with that being said, the parameters that we can have are probably doing more. They won't be mentoring them by themselves. It will be under the supervision of an adult. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes. You stated that the 2 areas or the 3 areas that were lowest, and I think this would have been Miss Melissa that said this, were your students identified as Black, Hispanic, and preferred not to answer. I guess my question is, what percentage of your total Black population, Black student population, participated in the survey? And do you feel that, and same thing for Hispanic students, do you feel that it's a good representation, a good sample size of your Black student population to give accurate data on their overall, a good representation of the sense of belonging for that students?
I do. I want to say it was like 100, was it 140 or, I don't have the number, but it was a good sample size. It was it wasn't 140, it was about 300 something.
I would have to get those numbers back for you because with the analysis, the report that was provided for us, it provided the number and then like a standard deviation, but that wasn't a part of this presentation, but I'll make sure that you have that information.
Thank you. I would ask for the same information from the high school. That was going to be my same question for the high school department as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Was that both parts of your question? Okay, thank
you. And our results were very similar to middle school. And our interventions, or actually our strategies that we currently have in place, are pretty similar as well. For instance, our existing strategies, well, just to give some background initially, the beauty of the results that we have is that, as Melissa mentioned, it's stated that students feel very comfortable with our staff, with our teachers, with the adults in school. They scored very highly in the sense of, I have, a person or people that I feel comfortable with. So by having that result, it's really easy to utilize teachers and other staff members as your workers, as the people that are working directly with our students, because we're basically saying, look, the results show that students are very happy with adults here. We just have to identify ways for students to feel more comfortable with each other. So that's why we can actually put things in place and utilize the support of the teachers in the classroom to be the eyes and ears of what's going on and address it immediately, because we can't be everywhere. We try to be. We're rarely in our offices. We want to be in the hallway, the cafeteria, you name it, but we don't see everything. And by having the teachers that are in the classrooms in smaller settings to support students in that area is, for us, we think is a bigger bang for our buck. So we do have many strategies in place. We have new student orientation. So basically that's when new students come to school, PW, for the first time, whether they're incoming 9th graders or transfer students. We have a day where they're by themselves or with themselves, and they're able to acclimate themselves to the school, meet staff, communicate with each other, have a fun day where they're actually, it's a very low pressure day where students are familiarizing themselves with our school. The student orientation leaders, or the students are taking them around and providing them with information and details, and even a face that they can see throughout the entire year. So it's not someone that, in many cases, they'll develop relationships with the students that are coming in. We do have our ADL, No Place for Hate program. Our students are trained by the ADL, and our students go into bonus blocks and train other students. And the one feedback that students gave teachers was, and we made sure to share with our teachers, is when the teacher engages in the activities that the student ambassadors are teaching or relaying to the students, when the teachers are engaged, and students are more apt to engage as well. So the students actually ask the teachers to be part of the learning process, and not just, hey, most teachers, when you get a couple minutes to do some work on your own while someone's taking care of your kids, it's great, but it's much more beneficial and effective when students are involved. So that's newer for us. We did have the attic come and work with our leaders of the LGBTQ plus community, or GSA, our EIB leadership teams. So we received a lot of really good information from the attic, and students were able to identify some resources there. Our EIB leadership staff team performs, we meet here multiple times a year, and we have a strong team where we just turn around the training right away. In fact, our turnaround training is going to take place I believe it's in December and February. We do that at our faculty meetings and our leadership team, which I'm part of, and several teachers. We provide instruction to turnaround training for the staff. And our PSSM staff toolbox development. So anything we get directly from the PSSM, we share it directly to the staff. We basically don't sugarcoat anything. We basically say, these are the results. This is why the students are taking the survey. This is what we're finding. We need your help to implement these things, like what we mentioned earlier, as far as supporting students in supporting other students. New things. We have a new Students Ambassadors program, so anytime a student comes to PW, we connect them with student ambassadors that can walk them around. First, they shadow that student, so they become acclimated to the school, and then they continue relationships with that specific student. I know you mentioned that some students can maybe drain other students too much, but at the high school level, we don't have that as much. We kind of, and kind of students that they'll speak up, so they'll basically say, look, I'm here for certain things, but I'm not doing that, so we have less issues, but obviously all these supports happen under the adult supervision. So we do have our counselors are in charge of the new ambassadors program. We have the culture relevant and sustaining education staff trainings. In fact, we're going to have two teacher representatives and myself go through 1 and 2 at our next faculty meeting. Colonial Connections. This is a really good program where basically we have student partners. So anytime a student feels or is isolated, or say in the cafeteria sits by themselves, these students are trained to walk over and sit with that student and provide some sense of belonging to students. So their goal is to really just identify scenarios where students are not connecting to the school. Something pretty fun, student staff yoga. We started for bonus block. We started with like 4 people. Now it's maxed at 40. And it's the students, counselors, doing yoga together, and it's really it's as a form of a stress reliever, and it's a really nice experience. It's really nice to have seen that grow so much. And also stress relief stations. We have basically we purchased adult coloring books, just stress relieving types of things where like when students go to the we noticed that when students under duress went to the counselor's office, the guidance office, they would tend to like draw, fidget, do things to kind of calm themselves down. So we just bought a supply of stress relieving just activities where students come in and it calms them down, and then they're able to talk to us and really just provide support to students when they need it the most.
The same sentiment, I guess, from the middle school is thank you for implementing all of these practices. I had 2 questions, and the first question is probably for both middle school and high school, and it's around the No Place for Hate. And so My question is, when hate is displayed, because we know that it happens, and those students aren't necessarily part of the No Place for Hate club, or I don't know if we're calling it a club, but practice. Outside of discipline for those students, if we are, how are we utilizing the No Place for Hate practices to address the student behavior? And if we're not, something to think about in utilizing those practices, again, outside of just normal discipline for those particular behaviors.
Right. Well, we do use restorative practices in many cases. Certainly if there are certain infractions that are elevated, we are required to follow through with discipline. But in every case, even when that's the case, we do communicate with students. We share with them practices that have taken place in their ADL bonus blocks, because we have a list of those that are provided. But also, we have those conversations with students, and we don't just provide, just basically like, our goal is to change the behavior. So if something occurs, our goal is to provide support to the student. We have our care team. We refer students to the care team. We communicate. We're all part of the administrative part of the care team, like the counselors are. So we have so many supports that we can help students with. So that's kind of like an everyday occurrence when it comes to our discussions with students when they have any infractions. In most cases, our goal is to have those conversations with students to change the behavior, and that's what we're looking for, and also provide support.
So my question is only to both middle school and high school. Do we know when the students fill out the survey, like if they're new to the district or not? Do we have no sense of that?
Anonymous.
Okay, I just wonder if there was like a questionnaire that kind of narrowed any
That's
of
what
it
I'm
down.
not a big fan of. I'm a fan of an anonymous survey because it provides, anonymity. But I want to know who's answering. So it's like, 'cause I can help. So you want to help students, and also you don't know who said prefer not to answer. Like, I'm not a big fan of that either. It's like, I'd like to drill down and get more specific answers that we can act on. But no, the answer is no, unfortunately.
So is that feedback that we can give to the University of Pennsylvania around potentially modifying the questions a little bit, not necessarily changing it from being anonymous, but more so, how do we potentially get at some of that potential data and still keep it anonymous? I happened to meet the person who's working with us last week from the University of Pennsylvania, very pleasant young lady, and so she seems very open to that type of feedback. So just something to potentially offer.
Yeah, they've modified a couple things for us, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot to keep it consistent. But also the issue is once you have the survey, and this is our third time with it, once you start changing the rules in the playing field, then you kind of don't have the same, you can't compare apples to apples. So we're kind of in it, unless we, I guess, start over.
One last question, I'm sorry. With respect to growth for next year's survey, I suppose we're doing one next year. Like, what are you, spring? I'm sorry, in the spring. What are you hoping to see in terms of increment of growth? Like,
I think we're starting to see it already. The last time we administered the PSSM, we had a 3.71, and we see that we've improved since then, and we have a 3.81 as relates to the overall sense of school membership. Something that I kind of want to spend a little bit more time on is the graph that we looked at earlier, and when we shared that some of the strengths or the top strengths were tied to teachers. I also want to share that in the slide before, some of these questions are in reverse. And it's intentional that some of these questions are reversed. And again, the PSSM has been around since 1993, has been well vetted and used nationally and abroad since 1993. What you'll see is you'll see the reverse of some of those questions to ensure that our students are not just selecting, strongly agree or strongly disagree. What you will see is the reverse of some of those questions to ensure that we are getting an accurate analysis of our students. So when we see these questions, the ones that are highlighted in like that salmon color are the reverse of those questions. So I know it was a little confusing when we, shared the top areas of belonging being tied to staff. And I want to go back there. Here we go. And as you can see, it's a reverse of a question. So we want to make sure that our students do feel that sense of belonging with our staff, so much so that the question is asked different ways to ensure that students are reading the questions and answering them appropriately, and then ensuring that there is consistencies throughout those indicators that I highlighted earlier. So. Right, so you have correct, so that would be, yes. Correct, so to that response, it would be, strongly disagree, likely to not happen, on the liker versus the strongly agree. So it would be the opposite response to that reverse question. Correct, yes. So we met as a team to review the analytics from this most recent PSSM cycle. Thank you so much for that. Something that I also want to spend a little more time on is gender. And Mike Ascona did a great job of sharing everything that we're doing to address this area of opportunity as it relates to our LGBTQ students. Since last school year, we've been involved with professional development, but not only professional development, receiving additional support and resources from the ADDICT group out of Philadelphia. And with that, they've met with the GSA. We've also had meetings with the curriculum department. And also provided professional development for our EIB leadership team, which provides turnaround training for their respective schools. Something else that I want to highlight is the ADDICT was also a part of our best practices fair. It was actually one of the sessions that was highly sought after and was maxed out for each session throughout the day. So something that I want to share with you all. Now, we don't have data around students that, like, we don't have the number of students that are new to the district as it relates to this report, but what we do have are the grade bands. And you can see here in the grade bands, and I do apologize for the color, but we see that with this PSSM, we see this in the rectangle, we see our current middle school students and our current high school students. And what you can see is our current 7th grade increased the PSSM from a 3.87 to a 3.96. So that's our current 7th grade students, our cohort of 7th graders that were 6th graders last year. So we see that that's an increase by grade band. We don't have anything for our 6th graders because our 6th graders did not participate. They were 5th graders last school year. They did not participate in the PSSM. And then our current 8th graders that were 7th graders last year increased from a 3.70 to a 3.81. So we see that there's an increase across the board there. We see the same trend with 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. We see an increase from our current ninth grade, our last year eighth grade, from a 3.66 to a 3.78. Our current 10th graders improved from a 3.64 to a current 3.75. And our 11th graders from a 3.7 to a 3.75. We do see a little bit of a dip in our 12th grade students of a 0.06. So there is a dip there, but we also, if you can recall from our last presentation, that as students matriculate, and this has been researched over the decades, that their sense of belonging actually decreases. And it's because they're reaching this self-actualization part of their life where they're starting to question more. So the sense of belonging sometimes dips as students matriculate through high school. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to include again the staircase to success. And again, this illustration is from the book that we unpacked as administrators this summer, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity. And as you can see, belonging is the step before achievement. And as you heard here this evening, and we saw it with flying colors, it was almost the same shade of blue that I have as the background of this presentation. We know that when we prioritize belonging and we prioritize EIB, that our students' likelihood to achieve, our students' likelihood to grow increases tremendously. So I wanted to end with that. I also want to end with a quote from one of my favorites, the late and great Dr. Maya Angelou. And I've learned, and she quotes, I've learned that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And it is my hope that we continue to help our students feel like they belong here at the Colonial School District. Any questions?
And with all this data and all the graphs and everything that Penn generates, which is great to use, it's a catalyst for getting in the buildings and meeting with kids, which you have done without hesitation and with full enthusiasm. And the principals understand it. And Melissa is, the fact that you were a teacher and a principal, I think, just adds to, it gives you a sense of credibility to our students, Melissa. You can tell right away when you interact with our kids, that you have that credibility. And so all of this data is great, but it doesn't replace getting into the buildings and meeting with our kids. And the Student Ambassadors Club, one of Marquia's greatest strengths that Sean has always told me and that I've observed is the quick relationship you have developed with our kids and our families. It's always about meeting with the students. And Mike's done that for years in his role. But that's, when we talked this summer and we did our book study as a team, one of the groups presented in chapter 6, the Maasai tribe. I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, you are.
And every morning they ask, how are the children? And so it sounds very poetic and somewhat sappy to hear from a stoic guy like me, but that's the reality. That's what we do on a daily basis. So the data is great, but at the end of the day, it's about meeting with the kids and asking, how are the children?
Yes.
And that was something when you first came to the district that I said that has to be part of your job. And I'm grateful how much you've embraced it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Christian. Thank you, school board. And to respond to your question, the children are well. All the children are well.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 policies to review. The first one is student services policy, and I'm going to go through this very, very quickly, if you don't mind, but if you have any questions, please do ask. Basically, we are required as part of our overall comprehensive plan to include in that comprehensive plan the student services program. So this policy does direct us to do that. And of course, we do. because it's part of the comprehensive plan. So that's done every 6 years. And the things that are covered in that plan include providing for the developmental services in the district that address our students' needs through our guidance counseling program, psych services, health services, our home and school visitor services, social work services, all of these things that support our students in addressing academic, behavioral, wellness, health, personal, and social development of our students. So all of those things are included in that comprehensive plan. Also, we are responsible under student services for diagnostic, intervention, and referral services. So for students who are experiencing academic difficulties, behavioral difficulties, emotional difficulties, we do assess, we do intervene, and we do provide referral services either to our, first of all, in-house, our school counselors, our community counselors, our mental health counselors, which we do have now, so that we can provide services. And if we need, we also then make referrals for outside sources as well. We consult and coordinate with outside services, and also that's part of our due diligence as part of this plan. So are there any questions in regards to the student services plan or policy? Okay, you can look at it in more detail, as well as the laws that we have to address within.
Hey,
These
Karen,
student
I'm
assist-
sorry. I just need to know what the number is. I can't get to Board Docs. The number, the policy number.
The number 146?
Thank you.
Sorry about that. And the next policy is our student assistance program, which is policy 236. And again, this talks about the definition of our SAP program, our process to remove barriers that students may have to learning that may involve behavior or substances as well. So we do have SAP teams in all of our buildings, and all of those people who sit on the SAP team, including our school counselors, our school nurses, administrators, are trained in the SAP process. And this also goes over the guidelines of the SAP process, identifying issues that pose a barrier, determining whether the identified problems lie within the responsibility of the school, informing parents of any problems that affect the students from accessing their learning, making recommendations to assist the students and the parent, providing information on community resources and options to help students deal with the problems, and also establishing links and resources for the community. This is also one of the reasons that we have our pay survey, which works hand in hand with our SAP process. So as part of our involvement with PAYS and our SAP process, we now have a SAP person, a SAP counselor at our high school, which we did not have before. So I'm very excited to have that. Any questions about this? I know we went over it pretty quickly, but none of these are new to our district. It's just that we had to update the policy. Any questions? Good answer. Okay. So I'm going to turn this over then to Jess, who's going to talk about our webpage.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it really brief too, because unfortunately, and I wish I had better news to share, we still don't have, well, we have the app, but it is still not working the way it should. And therefore, we have not, made a big announcement about using it until those issues are cleared up. The issues remain the same as they were in October, I think, when I updated you all about, I'd hoped that in September we would be able to launch, but these problems persist. I continue to, push our vendor to give me a date, and they continue to deflect and say November, end of November. There's no specific date, unfortunately, but I did get confirmation that they will issue us a credit for all of the, time that has been wasted to date. We're certainly not happy with the way things are playing out, so we'll keep needling them, but I'm sorry I don't have better news for you right now. Any questions? Right, it'll be icing on the cake when it's ready, but again, like, we don't want to confuse people or, launch something that's just not working the right way, so.
Are there any board comments, questions? Any public comment? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.